Well, there you go. Hello, good sirs and viewers watching the live stream and people watching the replay. Very happy to have you here. Hello, good sirs and viewers watching the live stream. Oops, a bit of feedback there. It's gone. All right, I'll do that again. Hello, thanks for watching the replay. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for tuning in. I am here with my co-host, Gilbert.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
And we're also here with returning guest, William McGimpsey.
G'day, everyone. Nice to be here.
For those that don't know, William is a political commentator, regular guest on Reality Check Radio, and a regular guest here. So there you go. He's a big-brained political commentator working for, and he also runs the blog, The Conservative Network. So there you go.
Be sure to check him out, everybody. He's got a lot of good stuff. And today we'll be discussing the census and
I'll share that now.
how.
There we go.
Yeah, how our country is demographically changing. It's quite alarming. William has been posting about this recently. You should all keep up with his timeline because it is some really astounding stuff to see how quickly in the last couple of decades, how much things have shifted away from its previous European NZ demographic to a more diverse Indian, Chinese, Filipino, and also just kind of mixed demographic makeup in our country. So he's here to tell us about what he's found out and just go over some of the details. So, and then we'll have a discussion, I'm sure, about the political framing of all of this, and yeah, we can go from there. So, William, how are you doing, and where do you want to start us off with?
Yeah, well, I'm good. Let's just sort of dive into it here. There's two big issues with the census, right? So the first is just the scale of the demographic change that the numbers show. It shows that New Zealand Europeans are down to 55.9% of the population, something like that. And Maori are down to, depending on whose numbers you take, if you take my numbers, that Maori are down to 7.3% of the population, and an additional 8.2 who are sort of mixed Maori Euro. And Asian is up to 15.7% of the population. So that's obviously a mix of Chinese, Indians, Filipinos, and other peoples. But this is a significant change in our demographics. We're losing like 3 to 5%. New Zealand Europeans are going down by 3 to 5% between every census at this point. So every 4 years, that's how far we seem to be going down. I've said there's a real chance at the current rates of immigration that by the time of the next census, we will be below 50%. Now, that may or may not happen. The immigration rates now are starting to go down again, like the amount of people we're bringing in is starting to go down. We were up around 250,000.
Ridiculous number. I said the
5% of the population, if you're 5 million population. That is tailed down. It's below. The latest figures came out, I just think yesterday or the day before, for the year to August 2024, and we're down under 200,000 coming in over the year now. So hopefully that trend continues. But the other thing we've got to contend with now is the large numbers of New Zealand citizens leaving the country.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gross numbers of New Zealand citizens leaving are up over 80,000. And the net numbers are 50,000 odd, because you always have like 20 odd thousand.
Yeah, people come and go. Yep.
Coming back. So, but yeah, huge. The rate of demographic change is huge. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the way Stats New Zealand are reporting this information, and what they're doing. It seems as if it's intended to obscure what's really going on. So in the figures that they reported, their headline figures in their media release, they said that New New Zealand European were 62.1% of the population. Maori were 17.8%, which is a huge figure. Indian 5.8%, Chinese 5.6%, Samoan 4.3%, and then a bunch of other little ethnicities around 2%. Now, their figures sum to 106.8% if you add them all up. So obviously something funny is going on there if your percentages add to more than 100.
Yeah.
And what they're basically doing is they're double counting. I think they're double counting people who have more than one ethnicity. So obviously, if you're half Maori and half European, you tick both boxes on the census. And it looks like what they're doing is they're plonking those people into both New Zealand European and the Maori category. And so when you add it up, you get more than 100%. But the problem is, even there, it looks like they're not doing that uniformly for all people of mixed ethnicity. It looks like they're doing it selectively, because if they were doing it with all people of mixed ethnicity, the numbers should have added to more than 106.8%. So, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what's going on there, and I think they really need to come out and tell us.
Yeah, because they're just making numbers up. I mean, there are people that go, oh, I'm 1/10 Maori, so they put on like Maori European, even though,
There's a lot of Maoris. I mean, Christian Cullen played for the Maori All Blacks.
Yeah.
He was 164th Maori, apparently, according to his dad or something.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that doesn't really count if you're like... if it's like a drop in a bucket and you look like you're straight from like Northern Europe, and you click Maori on the box. I mean, David Seymour does it. It's just sort of funny. So there you go. There's a lot of people like that.
Maori. Yeah, there's a lot of Maori who look at white as white can be.
Yeah, I mean, over 90% white, and they go, oh yeah, I'm Maori. So then they get like the free Maori bucks or something. They get like the iwi dollars coming in or something. So there you go.
They look like they're trying to put the Maori category as high as possible. Stats New Zealand.
Yes.
So 17.8, they're trying, like, to get to that figure, they must have found every possible way they could think of to get more people into that category. Including, I think, because Muriel Newman from the NZCPR blog, she's done some analysis on this as well. What she thinks is happening is they're not just going on the ethnicity people tick on the form. They're also going through, Stats New Zealand are going through themselves afterwards using data on ancestry and things they have from elsewhere to put even more people into the Maori category. And I think they have to do this. It's to do with the way they calculate the size of the Maori electorate.
I was about to actually say that's exactly why they do it. They want to get like a couple, maybe go from 7 Maori seats to 9 or something.
But the calculation for how big the Maori electorates should be, one of the numbers that goes into that, I think, is the number of people with any Maori ancestry who could potentially be on the Maori roll if they wanted to be. There's other numbers too.
There's also, spoiler alert, you don't actually have to be Maori to go on the Maori roll. Like, anyone can do it. Like, it's sort of funny. Like, there's no genetic testing to go on the Maori roll. You can just click the box and go on the Maori electorate, which I've always thought was quite funny.
Don't even have to be a Rachel Dolezal.
Yeah, you don't even have to pretend to be like 126 Maori like David Seymour.
Yeah.
But what's really the thing about this is they're using different methodologies to figure out the number of people in the different categories, and that is not statistically credible. Like, you need to have a uniform process that you apply equally to all the categories to figure out how many are people and what proportions are in each one.
The thing is, as well, like, oh, sorry.
No, you go.
The thing is, like, pretty much every Maori has some like mixture of European, because it's been like generations of there's basically no Maoris left, because you look at these pictures of Maoris from the 19th century, right? And they had a much more Asianistic look to them. They were much more like an Asiatic looking people. While now you can tell like most Maoris have more European looking facial structures. So it's sort of interesting. Like most Maoris, like I doubt there's any sort of full blooded Maoris left. Like it's pretty much, I would say it's like a possibility.
Yeah, well, I think there could be something to that as well. There would have been a lot of the European diseases way back in the day. They would have preferentially
that's probably true as well.
Preferentially taken out the people who are only Maori, and if you had a bit of European blood in there for whatever reason, you might have had some of the immunity. So, but I don't know. I'm speculating, but I've heard that as well. That there's no real, true, full
If there is,
Yeah,
there's not much, and it's probably like dwindling quite rapidly.
So I mean that I'm not taking a position on that though. I'm just
I'm just pointing it out that most Maori, like well over I'd say over 99%, probably have some sort of European mixture anyway. And then a lot of the time that mixture is like quite high, as in like 50%, and they still just go, "Oh, I'm just Maori, it's all right."
It is a curious thing. They just want to see Maoris everywhere. Basically, they want to see Maoris in their dreams and in their nightmares and wherever they look. But as you were saying, William, you were talking about it's that they need a same sort of structure to investigate all of these things. And I think you were there.
Are you there?
Oh, I'm here.
What were you saying? Sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, I must have just cut out. I think something's going. Maybe it's the weather. Yeah. That. Oh no. Just picking up on where you last went on. You were talking about how there's some funny business going on, and that we all need like a similar model to be able to fairly or rather accurately investigate these things, right? So I think that's where you left off. Do you want to continue along that train of thought?
Yeah, well, I don't know if there's much more to add to that. I mean, when you add up, so I mean, there's a few things I've been through. The percentage of the ethnic percentages I've got adds to 106.8, which is sort of seems like it would be. It's first of all, it's higher than 100, so something's amiss, and it's lower than what you would expect if they double counted all the ethnic categories. Because you've got people who have like 3 different ethnic categories, 4 that I mean, you can have up to. You can have lots of different ethnic categories. And so if you're going to point, if some people have like 6 different ethnicities and you're counting all of them in each of the categories, you should have a much higher number than 106.8%. So the methodology there is fishy. It's something not consistent. Also, when you count up the number of people they say that they've surveyed, so that they say they surveyed like 4 million. I mean, where's the number? I'll find it here and read it out to you. 4,993,923 people filled in the census. If you add up the number of people they put into each category, it's 5,323,608 people, right? And so that number, 532,608, you think, well, if 4 million whatever filled it out, and the total of all these ethnicities adds to that 5,300,000 figure. What have they done there? Have they found information about other people that they have from data elsewhere and bunged that in? Well, then you go and look, how many people did they think were in the country at the time of the census? And it's less than that, right? So I found that out somewhere. It's like 5,200 something. I mean 5,200,000.
Yeah.
So something is amiss there as well.
They're just making numbers up, essentially, like double counting people sometimes, but half the time they're not. I think it's exactly right, just to boost those Maori percentages, so that they can these Maori institutions can ask for more money from the government, because they're like, oh, we're 18.9% of the population now, and Maori seats as well. So it's basically, I think that's just like part of the grift that they're inflating those numbers.
Yeah, the way they've done it in previous censuses, they've split people out into mixed categories. So if you're part Maori, part European, you got put into the mixed Maori European category, and similarly with all the other mixed categories. And that was a lot clearer, because the mixed Maori European category is actually quite a sizable category, 8.2% of the population. It's bigger than the Maori category alone. So and there's if there's a few 2%ers in a lot of these other mixed categories, like European, Pacific Islander, European, Asian. And so when you add them all up, it can be quite sizable. So that's that, I guess. The other thing we can talk about is just some of the errors in the muck-ups in the census generally. So, if you remember back,
here we go. You got a thread on it. I just brought it up on screen.
Now that thread is one I did recently. That's about the stuff we've probably already talked about.
Oh, sorry.
But back months and months ago, they did. If you remember the controversy around the transgender questions they were putting in, the gender identity questions. So they've always had questions about your biological sex, because that's obviously
of course,
data to gather in a census. But then because of the trans ideology, they wanted to gather information about gender identity as well. So they actually had 4 questions in this one about, your sex, your gender identity, and then other stuff about your sexuality, whether you were gay or boy, I don't know, I don't remember what all the things were. And then the other one was whether you were intersex. So if there are some people who are genuine hermaphrodites and they're not quite a man and not quite a woman on a biological level, rather than just, having funny female or male feelings opposite to what they really are. So they put all those questions in there as well. And obviously that is what they're doing there is they're catering to a highly ideological, trans activist view of what gender identity is. The whole idea of gender identity is a recent invention. Most people believe,
it was invented in the early 20th century, early to mid 20th century.
Yeah, most people.
20th century,
most people, even today, I would wager that most New Zealanders don't believe in that.
Oh, absolutely. It's unpopular. It probably peaked to popularity 3 years ago. It's only just going down since then.
Yeah, so they think you have men and women on a biological level, and then you have a small minority of mentally ill people who think they're the opposite one to what they are. But what Stats New Zealand are doing is they're legitimating this radical trans ideology that's taking what we used to consider a mental illness and turning it into a civil rights movement.
Still is considered a mental illness, I'm pretty sure. Gender dysphoria.
The New Zealand government, every member in Parliament, every MP, consider this, every MP in Parliament voted for the law to allow you to change your sex on your birth certificate.
Yeah, was New Zealand first in government at the time? Was this when they were out of Parliament, or is this recent?
I can't remember when it was passed, but that's just incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's nuts. Obviously 100% of the population doesn't agree to that, so why are 100% of the MPs voting on this?
It makes you think, is there some sort of transgender mafia that is blackmailing all these people? How could that possibly be the case?
It kind of is, to be fair. It kind of is.
It is pretty amazing. You think about someone that the statisticians in Census you think would have gathered up all this data, and they go, okay, here's how it is. We're going to present it. And then their boss or someone up high said, no, you need to count them as double Maoris, not singular Maoris, and they need to be trannies in there as well. And so someone actually told them to actually fudge the numbers so that they appear larger as a demographic. So there is that sort of, it is, I just wanted to say that it is interesting to consider that that such tomfoolery was going on, that it would have been someone demanding that these statisticians use sort of dishonest methods to present their data. And so this was, you mentioned in your article that this was in the Australian census where they completely removed questions about ethnicity while simultaneously adding more questions about gender and sexual identity to fiddle with the statistics. And I think you said it's maybe a tactic by the government since they're kind of invested in this whole diversity agenda, DEI agenda in their own way. It's meant to kind of hide or obscure facts about or the reality of the Great Replacement, whereas concentrating on more of their leftist sort of sexuality weirdness agenda. And that was also in the NZ stats results as well.
Yeah, well, this is speculative, although pretty informed and evidence-based speculation from me here. That what they're doing is they're sort of trying to muddy the waters, basically, on the ethnicity data, take out questions around them, present the data in sort of misleading ways, but bung in more questions about gender and sexual identity, and put all the focus on that instead. And this is something that's happening it happened in New Zealand to a certain extent. It's also happening in Australia. With the Australian census, I've been reading up on this recently. They have traditionally, I think, gathered information about ethnicity in a different way. They've asked about ancestry, rather than ethnicity. I think that's right. I'm happy to be corrected if I've got that wrong. I've just sort of started reading up on this. And so they've got a series of different questions they ask about ancestry, country of origin, like questions like that, and they use that information to present data that's sort of kind of like ethnicity data, but isn't. But anyway, during sometime in the recent years, 2022 maybe, the multicultural groups in Australia lobbied to have questions on ethnicity added into the Australian census, and the Australian Statistics Department agreed to do that, and then they backflipped on it and decided to take it out again. And so the British Australia community has been talking about this. They put out a press release on it saying that the ethnicity questions ought to be in there. And if they were, and the reason it's important to gather ethnicity is, back in the day, Australia was 98% white or something like that. New Zealand was about 92% white in 1950 or whatever, and 7% Maori, and then less than 1% everything else. So that New Zealand and Australia were white countries basically. Right. And so if everyone's white, it doesn't really matter to gather the ethnicity data too much. Everyone's just a New Zealander, or everyone's just an Australian, and everyone knows what that means. And there's not really much controversy. But as you get more and more ethnicities in your country through immigration and multiculturalism and diversity, then the way people are, the ethnic groups to which they subscribe and that ethnic identity that they use to identify themselves, obviously that's diversifying too. And everyone isn't just an Australian anymore. And I think what they're worried about there, so it would be useful information to have just from a purely, this is one of the reasons you do a census, to know who the people in your country are, what type of people they are and stuff like that. But I think what they're worried about, and this is what the British Australia community posts kind of alluded to, is that they're worried if they started to do that, first of all, Australians would become aware of the degree of ethnic replacement that's going on. And second of all, what they really fear is the traditional Australians or traditional New Zealanders who are, the traditional white majority.
Yeah, founding stock of the country.
The founding stock, identifying themselves as a group and starting to work together to work for their own group interest.
Yes.
Because if they did that, they would dominate the political scene. At the moment, most Western countries, well, I don't know about most, but many Western countries, particularly Anglosphere countries, are ruled over really by a coalition of minority groups. So you've got your ethnic minorities, then you've got your gender and your sexual minorities as well, who sort of ally into the group, and they use the tools of identity politics and power politics. It's basically functioning kind of like a mafia. You get your people into positions of power.
Yeah, of course. Nepotism.
Lobby people. And the majorities in these countries sort of don't do things that way. We're sort of doing things the old way still, where we're trying to
everyone's the same. We're all the same,
persuade people and talk about abstract policy solutions rather than arguing for what's in our interest and what advances our power. If we were to do that, because we've got more people and probably more resources, we would be a fearsome force. So, I think they fear that happening, because that would be a big change in the way politics works in these countries. And a lot of these people, they like the way it works now, where the majority sort of lies down and takes what it gets, and the minority groups basically are having their way.
Yeah, basically. Well, that's the thing. Like, you can't start a Anglo-Saxon New Zealand advocacy group in New Zealand and get like hundreds of millions of dollars in funding, like the Maori and Indian advocacy groups do from these federal we don't have a federal government, from the central government. So obviously they're not going to do that, but you wouldn't have to, because that's the thing, there's so many of us. If we even if just like 10-20% of Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-Celtic, European people within New Zealand and Australia, just started, giving ourselves, maybe a little bit of preferential treatment, maybe hiring other people of the same stock, visiting businesses of the same stock, it would like nearly overnight become like a massive power base. And our power base would be so powerful, even though these non-political Anglo-Saxons, like they would have to either like get on board or like suffer because everyone else is doing it, including their racial kin at that point. So they wouldn't really have a choice. So
yeah, I mean, it's like the way politics works in prison a little bit, isn't it? Where you've got to be allied with one of the ethnic gangs in order to be protected, and
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's how politics works in multicultural societies.
Well, I mean, that's
So
just
I don't want a multicultural society. I mean, I think that's kind of retrograde doing things that way. However, it's like a prisoner's dilemma, isn't it? If everyone else is doing it that way, and that's the way things work in a multicultural society, then unfortunately, that's the way we have to do it too. If we're to, survive, thrive, have our way, and have our values and interests respected and represented at the table.
yeah. Be respected and live as dignified citizens in this country. Even just that, and not be discriminated against, which is kind of what's already happening. We're always given
absolutely,
short end of the stick in so many different ways with the DEI hiring policy.
DEI hiring, especially in government, like DEI hiring is basically the number one. Oh, you just need like a C grade on your university degree and be some sort of minority, and you're basically guaranteed a position in the government somewhere, or at least you used to under Labor. I mean, there have been cuts now, and hopefully they continue, where they just basically like let anyone that wants to join into these government institutions on, a local level and a central government level. The only qualification you need for these things is, again, just be a minority, some sort of racial or mentally ill minority, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, they even have in some universities like, they recognize that certain said groups are kind of lower achievers or get lower grades in universities, so we're going to have like special classes for Pacifica and like Maori people, and we're going to basically just give them the answers in these classes before the exam to help them give them a leg up. So I remember this, but the problem was in the class, like only one Pacific person showed up, and he brought like his white friend, which was like me and this other chick, which is kind of funny. Yeah.
Oh, so this happened to you? I thought you were talking about some other story.
Oh yeah, it does. I think they employ the same sort of what would you call it, initiative, I suppose, and another. But yeah, this happened to me, and like, this Polynesian guy I knew. He was like, "Oh yeah, just come, G." And I was like, okay. and our other friend came as well. So we just got like all the answers. And the guy who was doing it, a Polynesian guy, was just like, "Oh yeah, all good, G, bring them 2A." We just go give him the answers.
At least they're sharing their minority privilege with the Anglo-Saxon white man. There's some like benevolent minorities out there after all.
Yeah, but they're certainly they're not all.
Of course, I think in human nature, most people are good by nature, but I mean, not everyone. But anyways, so one of the things that I think is interesting is the reason why the statistics for Europeans are going down isn't just because, all these browns and whatever are coming in, or Asians. It's also because people are fleeing the country, essentially. We have the largest amount of people leaving New Zealand, I think, pretty much ever. Like, I think it was, again, 80,000 citizens.
Right. You're right. It's over 80,000. So in the year to August, it was 81,000, something like that. That's in my tweet if you want to bring it up there. But it's been over 80,000 on a year-on-year basis for the last few months, and we've been setting records for at least the last couple, and maybe more than that of monthly updates. So yeah, these are record numbers of people leaving the country.
And the reason because of that is because the economic situation here is dire. Again, it's been a per capita recession for the last 2.5 years. People are making less money. They're having less disposable income. Yeah, it makes sense that people are leaving here because it's getting worse here. Standards of living here are dropping. So it makes sense they go, oh, I can do better in Australia, or do better, well, I don't know, in America or something. Make 10 times the amount of money doing the same thing and don't have to deal with, minorities being everywhere. Well, I mean, in America you would, but in Australia, less so.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So it's interesting, as these minorities come in, demand for housing and infrastructure, healthcare, roads, ports, everything gets clogged up, prices get higher. people leave, and then it just keeps getting worse and worse because we're losing our best people. We have both brain drain, we have a brain drain crisis, and then we're bringing in all these unskilled migrants as well to just like keep making the country worse and worse.
We're always told, we need to bring in people to replace the people who are leaving. Well, I mean, I would just like to point out that the fact that we brought so many people in is actually one of the factors pushing people to leave.
Absolutely.
Because, as you point out there, like we've got a housing crisis, which is driven largely by too many people coming in. A housing crisis means you've got too many people and not enough houses.
Yeah, of course. Supply and demand. Supply and demand is very simple.
Yeah, but for a long time in New Zealand, and I think it's only just started to change now, every time you've asked, well, why have we got a housing crisis? That's like a religious mantra. The economists go, well, the problem is supply. We have to have more supply. Well, demand counts too, right? Demand counts in every market. And the reason we need to build more supply is because we've got too much bloody demand.
Yes.
And you can do all this stuff to free up supply, and I support doing it. These are all, it's not like these are bad ideas. But at a certain point, like, even if we did all those things, if we have 250,000 people coming in a year, there's only so many houses a country of 5 million people can build in a year, right?
And why would it's sort of annoying? It's like you don't even really want like construction jobs. A lot of them, I mean, some of them are well paying, but a lot of these jobs, like plastering, scaffolding, jib fixing, they're pretty low paid, sort of crappy jobs. Like having it like a smaller construction market means that you can have potentially more labor supply and skill people up to these more high skill jobs. Like having a more, because I think New Zealand actually has, as like a part of the population, something like 6 to 7% of our working population works in some sort of construction, which is the highest in the Western world, I believe. So,
well, it wouldn't surprise me if you're bringing in record numbers if the numbers of people you're bringing into the country is one of the highest in the world, then the number of houses you're going to have to build is also going to have to be one of the highest in the world.
Yeah. So sorry, just the argument. I want to add something to that. The argument we don't build enough houses doesn't make any sense. We build more houses than any Western country, like as part of percentage of population. It's just we keep bringing in more and more people.
Yeah, and you're never going to get like if you keep bringing in more and more people, you're never going to get ahead of the problem. You have to, at some point, you have to shrink down the number of people you bring in. But it's not just the houses. It's also the infrastructure, the roads, the schools, the hospitals.
Yeah, of course.
And the public services are stretched. People are wondering why are public services are stretched. Well, if the hospital has to cater to, a population,
100,000 like Filipino scaffolders, like they're going to have health issues, like breathing in all the scaffolding dust every day, or plaster dust, or whatever, Filipino plasterers or whatever.
You have to constantly expand the capacity of your hospitals and your schools and your roads and even your electricity grid. People wonder why our power prices are so high. Well, if we've got 1 million more people than we did 10 years ago, you're going to need a lot more power, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The power prices up. All this stuff is driven fundamentally by the number of people we're bringing into the country. Yeah. So constantly fixating on, getting the economy growing, building more infrastructure. In a way, you're never going to get on top of the problem that way, because the number of people wanting to come into New Zealand is potentially infinite. There's like 8 billion people in the world now. Most of them live in countries that are crappier than New Zealand, and who would be willing to come here if we were to let them in. You have to control the numbers coming in. There's no way around that. You have to control the numbers going in. And a lot of people who subscribe to this, a lot of economists have been, economists think they believe in a doctrine that's just about economics, but there's a lot of sort of globalist ideas are snuck into the way economics is taught. They really believe in an ideology that doesn't believe in national boundaries around national markets. But they don't know that they're doing something ideological when they're making these type of arguments, but they are. And so like if you merge all the world's markets together, you're going to get huge problems like this, because all the people in poorer, crappier countries will be willing to come here on a material basis, and you just can't cope with that pace of change.
Absolutely,
you have to manage it.
Well, that's the thing, because like New Zealand's a nicer country because again, it was built by the founding stock Anglo-Saxon and Celtic people that built all the infrastructure, ports, roads, railways, power stations, dams, your plumbing, 99% of that was built by Anglo-Saxon workers, builders, and businesses that supported them are also owned by Anglo-Saxons. And it's interesting that now we're getting all these people in. It's like we've made this really nice country, right, that our ancestors built. And because these people's ancestors in their countries, they're all corrupt. They just, they don't respect each other. They fleece each other on every opportunity. Low trust societies like India and whatnot, where you can't get anything done without having to pay off an official or something, or getting price gouged out of everything. Like, there's a reason why these countries suck, and that's corruption. And then they come here and they do the same thing. They start like price gouging all the local businesses. They make shady deals with each other when they start getting onto these like local government positions with their like friends, and then the price that also like leads to like corruption is a inherent inefficiency in a market system, and these people from these corrupt countries are coming here, bringing their corruption, and again like making our economy less efficient because of it.
I agree completely. Like there's an idea. I mean, the ruling ideology, if we're to call it that, whatever we want to call it, liberalism or whatever, considers all people from everywhere
global liberalism. Yeah, I mean,
basically all the same. It's not true. People are different, and those differences matter. And basically, the thing that matters most in determining how good things are going to be in your country is the type of people you have in it, the type of people who make it up. And these people seem to think, it's the quality of the laws, the quality of the institutions, whether it's democratic or not democratic, whether you've got a good education system. I'm not saying those things don't matter, but ultimately, those things are all kind of downstream
from the people.
Of the people. It's the people who build and maintain those institutions. You need to have good people. It helps if they are as homogenous as possible, because people who have similar interests and values are more able to, and language particularly, are more able to cooperate, more willing and able to cooperate and do things together, which is obviously very important. And yeah, so you need to focus on the people first, and then to a certain extent, all these other things will take care of themselves. And we saw that in the prior to them starting immigration. This is how the Scandinavian countries were always the best countries in the world, because they
had Scandinavian people living there, and then as soon as
they
brought
were
in
homogenous, high trust white societies, and some of them were kind of almost like they were very socialist countries, but they still had all the best statistics. And that's because if you've got a homogenous, high trust white society, the way you run it is like a secondary consideration. You can run it in all sorts of ways, and it's going to come out well because you've got the base of a good quality population there. That's the main thing that makes it turn out well, not necessarily so much
not like the tax rates. No one cares like what the tax percentage is. Like what matters is like you need a good.
That has some importance, but it's secondary importance, right? Yeah.
Massively secondary compared to, is this a good economic idea? We live in this like high trust society. Let's just bring in a bunch of like I'm talking about Syria, not New Zealand in this case. Let's bring in a bunch of like Afghanis and Syrians that don't speak the language, don't work, and like mooch off the government their entire lives. It's like, wow, what a great economic choice that was. And now they're finally starting to kick them out. They're actually starting to do remigration in Sweden. So it's sort of funny how these, humanitarian. I remember a decade ago they're going, wow, Sweden's a humanitarian superpower. It's helping all these people from Syria. And now the government's talking about sending them all back. So it's sort of interesting that.
Just a huge waste of time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
All this time they could have been investing all that capital that they overproduced into their own people. And I mean, the idea that we have to take all these people in to help them, why not help them where they are? I mean, there's all kinds of ways we could organize it if you even wanted to do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not really our responsibility to do it at all. It's sort of they should help themselves first. But if we are going to help them, of course, help them there. Obviously, you'd want something in return, maybe some resources, some natural resources or something to help them out. But
you would.
Yeah, you wouldn't just do it for free.
Even our capacity to help them, even our capacity to be humanitarian. The best humanitarian argument would be to maintain a high quality in our own societies and then give them money, because our ability to help them depends on us maintaining civilization, maintaining efficient, well-functioning societies. Downgrading our own society by bringing them in actually reduces in the long run our ability to help them.
Yeah, as we're seeing now with our, we're in an actual recession now, and for years since like the end of COVID-19, and we've been in a per capita recession.
Yeah, there was a movie about this, similar themes. It had Matt Damon in it. It was like futuristic, and the
Elysium.
Yes, that's it, Elysium. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that was basically the idea. Like, it's not fair that these people have this nice stuff up in the space station.
Let's ruin it. Yeah.
We really need to go in there, but if everyone goes in there and it ruins it, like you don't really have then a good society with the resources and know-how to help the other ones. It doesn't actually make things better.
It's actually sort of amazing. I think about this often. It's like, if we just didn't let in brown people, our society would be like 10 times better. Houses would be way cheaper, wages would be way higher, everyone will be able to afford to buy their own property. It'll be great. We're basically like living this like utopia, but because for some reason our leaders decided to let every single person that writes their name down on a list into the country, we have to live in like prison planet New Zealand, prison New Zealand as we're calling it, like off screen, or what was that on screen? I don't know, earlier.
Yeah, that puts us in a position where we are basically, if we have a welfare system, a welfare state, and the people we're bringing in are disproportionately users of the welfare state, and we're disproportionately payers into the welfare state, we're really like, in the long run, we're really enslaving ourselves. We're making ourselves like we have to provide for them, and like they're not going to vote that system away once they're in, because obviously it serves their interest to have us work for them and provide all this stuff for them. So we make ourselves slaves by doing things this way. This is a terrible.
Well, not even just like the health
the wrong
system
direction. We need to be going in the other direction, basically.
Not even just like people on welfare. It's like you've got all these NGOs, like every single iwi under the sun. You've got all these advocacy groups on a local level, on local council levels, national government level, that are just constantly like getting these grants from these councils and central government. And it's just literally they're stealing your money. You tax them, and instead of like using this tax money to something useful, like I don't know, a military or something, like we sort of need, instead of they just give it, oh yeah, go build a new tiki down the road. Here's like $1 million that we got from like our ratepayers. Here you go. Build another tiki. Oh, you need 2 million? Okay, here you go. Here's 2 million. Oh, you need 3? Oh, okay, here. So here you go. Here's just more and more. Like they're just constantly giving stuff away to these NGOs. It's sort of like it's sort of annoying considering how high our tax rates are here and our rates are in our local levels. They're just wasting money giving it to these NGOs and minority projects all the time.
It's the quote by Aristotle: "It is also a habit of tyrants to prefer the company of aliens to that of citizens at table."
Absolutely.
Citizens they feel are enemies, but aliens will offer no opposition. And I believe that's what Aristotle said. So that's what I believe in essence. To come to what I think will be the crux of the matter is really what Aristotle said, and that what we are is we're dealing with the preferences of tyrants in our society. And though Ardern and Luxon can go around smiling and hugging Pajits and whatever, it's still, these people, they are still tyrants, like Bill Gates wearing his pink shirt and eating like a hot dog or whatever. That's like, okay, but this guy is like really like a very bad person who's been part of this global experiment, essentially. So, really, it comes down to, we've all got to. They are. It's all deliberate. Of course, any sane person would say, we're actually concerned with New Zealanders, right? We want, New Zealanders to do well. I'm betting for New Zealanders. Let's do what's good for them. But instead, the pathos, the pathology in their minds now is, oh well, being a New Zealander doesn't actually mean anything. You can be an Indian or a Fijian or a Sri Lankan.
It's just a piece of paper. Oh, here's your piece of paper.
Just a piece of paper. That's right. And they're really seizing upon Aristotle's idea here. I think we all see that with these the UN, the WEF, all these. And of course, our enemies monopolize on this as well, and this is how they're carrying out the disintegration of our nations for this sort of agenda. So what we really have, as nice and as fluffy as they may make you feel, we're dealing with a bunch of, it could be that they are people pleasers and traitors in a soft sort of way, but they could be outright traitors and outright tyrants, as I believe Ardern was, and perhaps Luxon is more of a people pleaser, but in any case, the results are still the same, flooding our nation. So I mean, it really, we must impress upon the New Zealand people to start thinking in a way that these people serve us, and that we demand better from them, rather than
absolutely.
know nothing sort of initiatives that they put forth that really don't solve anything at all.
Yeah, we need to demand better from our leaders, because in the last 4 decades there's been a lot to be desired from them. So
yeah, I mean, otherwise we're gonna. I mean, they have all these institutions, covert as well, sort of operating on this medium, carrying this out. But I mean, we're going to have to, I guess, carry out our own kind of meme warfare, basically, and stuff like this. This is good. But
stuff like that.
yeah.
Remigration. Here's the solution. We were talking about the problem. Maybe we should start talking about the solution.
Yeah, this exactly, and I mean, we were discussing the entirety of this as if we're all genuine good players about this, but really we know it's like this is beyond ridiculous now. These people are not interested in the historic New Zealand or European New Zealanders, the people who built this country and who make it worth living, who actually make it a great place to live. So it's these people, they we have to change the political scape of things, and that may also mean changing the cultural scape, or I mean any way you can, because if you think about global internationalism, or Marxism, which has achieved this sort of veneer of liberalism, what most people identify as liberalism today. If you think about this, I just lost my train of thought.
Oh, no, I think you've explained yourself there. But anyways, we're talking about the problem. There's a lot of issues in New Zealand. Europeans, people of European descent in particular, are fleeing the country, while we're bringing in more like Filipinos and Indians and Chinamen and whatever. So, of course, the solution would be just send them back.
Sorry, I was gonna send them back. I was gonna say that I mean, if you think about modern say liberalism, it wasn't just a political movement; it was also a cultural one. It was an all-encompassing movement of many different facets that had multiple different arms and ways that it could go about achieving its end goals. And these were originally brainstormed by very nefarious, very cynical people. So continue with what you were saying.
So I think it's important to actually talk about actual policies that you can, basically communicate to actual politicians, because that's how things are going to get done. We can make funny maymays, and that's good. That's all good. I actually think that's a good thing to do, because you're changing the conversation, Overton window, whatever you want to call it. And we've pretty much won the argument. We won the argument 10 years ago, and people are starting to realize that mass migration is not good for the country. So some actual solutions would be deporting criminal, low skill, no skill migrants, people that lie on their visas, people that, run these illegal, that, price gouge and work for under the minimum wage, just deport them. Another one's deporting all criminals, deporting all illegal migrants and fake refugees, and then also getting rid of policies such as family unification. You do stuff like that, you're probably deporting hundreds of thousands of people that are, here doing nothing, like, you know, fake refugees or people that are working for $2 an hour under the books, and the people that hire them are usually also the same ethnic stock, so they should just all be deported together, and they can go start a like scaffolding company back in the Philippines or whatever. You start like actually enforcing the law, like just a lot of the time, like deporting illegal migrants, deporting people that lied on their visas, and getting
I
rid
think
of
it was.
like ridiculous policies like family reunification. It's like, oh, I'm in New Zealand, I'm permanent resident, I'm gonna bring in my 50,000 Pajita cousins or whatever from India. Like, why do we even have laws like that? It's like, get rid of
Yeah,
stuff like that and start deporting the criminals and the low skilled migrants.
I think also it was recently Croatia or like the Czech Republic that they recently like banned burqas and beards, Muslim beards. So
Yeah, just like
also a
stuff
way.
that is, I mean,
Yeah.
just you wouldn't have to. I mean, I guess you probably could ban it. I mean, you can ban it at institutions like the military. It's like, oh, you can't have a beard or a burqa. I mean, why can't you do the same for like all government positions? So it's like you can do stuff like that. You can bring in these policies that basically make it so you can't be taken advantage of by these minorities coming into your country. A lot of them will just leave. Like, I think like a lot of them will end up leaving once they find out, oh, I can't work here for $2 an hour, or hire the Pajit down the street to work for me for $5 an hour. Oh well,
Basically,
I'm off to like Canada, and then like
yeah.
Canada will do the same thing. I'm off to the UK. The UK will do the same thing. All right, I'm back off to India then because I got nowhere else to go. So
As soon as you set foot in New Zealander, you have to eat 10 baconators. Prime beef with sizzling bacon, baconators, and if you don't like it, then you can get out. You can get out.
Yes.
Yeah, that would deter a lot of people, I think.
The thing about these remigration policies, I think a lot of people, when they first hear about the idea, it seems scary. It seems like it involves treating people unfairly, having like human rights abuses, but that's not necessarily the case. So, I mean, Sweden's actually doing a lot of this stuff right now.
Yeah, they're deporting all their criminals, fake refugees, and like low-skill migrants that
we
work
actually
under the
pay
table.
a lot of these people. A lot of these people, when they come in, they get money for various things from the government, as it is. And all you have to do is start turning around those incentives, the incentives that are pulling people in, like the free government money, and say, well, you don't get the money if you come in, you get the money if you leave. And
Yes.
if you identify those programs and turn the incentives around so that the money points them in the right direction, you're going to start getting lots and lots of people leaving. And there's lots of deals you could do with a lot of the countries that these people are from that would be worthwhile for the host countries. So, like there's a lot of migrants in prison and stuff like that. Why don't we do like an economic development deal with some of these countries where they come from and build prisons there and then put the people there, and then that's a sort of employment thing in a poor country. And then the people that we can have the prison there. So there's lots of deals like that we can do. There's lots of things you can do. We're paying people to come in, pay them to leave. Like if you're on the dole, then you have to, you shouldn't be here to start with. But if we're paying you to stay here, maybe you get it if you leave for a few months and then it turns off. There's lots of things like that we can be doing.
I think like migrant dole bludgers don't pay them, just like force them onto the planes, like arrest them and force them onto the planes, and I think that's all you need there. With some of them you might need to pay, like in a more humane way. It's like, oh, you're here and you're working, at a I don't know, still laying bricks. Oh, I mean, you don't really need that. That's a job a New Zealand can have. Is like $2,000 to leave. You can start doing that in India or whatever, or for the Philippines.
The point is, like, one of the points here is like people like us, like British New Zealanders or Europeans in general, like it's part of our character to feel a sense of personal responsibility for the societies that we create. So we identify with our country, and we want the country to do well, and we feel as if we have a personal stake in it. A lot of the migrants who come here, they don't feel that way about the country they come into.
Oh, of course. Why would they? It's just a place to make money for like 90% of them.
Yeah, and so like we really need to think carefully about that when we're bringing people in. To start with, you want to be bringing in people, if you are going to bring in people, first of all, who have things in common with. So if you have more in common with people, you're more likely to get along with them. So that means language, culture, ethnic background, religion, all those things matter. And this isn't just sort of based on prejudice. This is statistically, there's academic literature that backs up that have people who have more in common.
Multicultural societies have lower trust. Like, this is a
lower trust, lower
academic
social
phenomenon.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that research is all there, but people act as if it isn't there, and that the only reason you would bring that up is if you were an evil racist. But obviously, that's not true.
It's just reality. Just say, look, it's reality. It's real.
We're motivated by a care for the societies we live in, and I want to preserve them, maintain them, make them as good as possible. Same reason, your wife tidies the house. She wants it to be a nice home. Well, we care about our home too, our national home, and we want it to be a nice place. And if you bring in people who aren't so nice at people, who don't treat it right, who don't contribute, who don't do their fair share, you're not going to end up with a nice country anymore. And we can't afford to do that. So, I mean, a lot of this is driven by, leftist ideology about people being all equal, and we have a humanitarian desire to help.
Blah, 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 whatever. All this, like,
some of it's driven
nonsense,
by businesses wanting to have cheap labor, I think.
Yeah, that's a big one. Well, we're just going to have to tell them deal with it. Like, you're going to have to start paying people or find a more sustainable business model.
We actually want wages to go up.
Yeah, and we want our businesses to be productive. Like, you can't just stagnate and have people working for $2 an hour. Like, no, you're just gonna have to deal with it and like innovate. Like, you're gonna have to tell a lot of these businesses that.
Business need to be. They have an important place in society, but it's not on the top. Business need to be put in their place a little bit by governments on both left and right, and say your interests matter, but they are not the main thing. The main thing is the well-being of the people of the country. Not the people of the country don't exist to serve the interests of business.
Exactly.
Business exists to serve the interests of the people of the country.
Right.
Exactly. That's the whole point of a business.
Their interests by this constant lobbying for more and a never-ending stream of immigrant labor. Then we're going to
essentially a subsidy. You're subsidizing them. Like, the government brings these people in to work for them, and they get to suppress wages, have like special deals where they work under the minimum wage. The government is essentially, subsidizing some businesses over the other by letting them decide policy on these laws.
That's right. So it's a threat to the country if you are constantly lobbying something that helps your business or organization, but has a wider negative effects on the society.
Not just society, it affects other businesses, because other businesses that would otherwise compete with you aren't able to compete because you're bending the laws by hiring low skill migrant workers.
So there needs to be, they need to be just a little bit of fear.
The market will fix it. Like, it's a meme, but the market will literally fix everything. You just stop migration, and within 5 years, everything will be fine. Like, you don't even need to do anything.
The people who believe in free markets, right? These people believe in free markets, but not when it comes to the labor market, right? We have to
of course,
the labor market manually by bringing in more and more and more people. Somehow we always have shortages of labor. Like the wages.
The wages never go up, but we have a shortage for some reason.
We rely on the price mechanism to adjust to
get
supply and demand equalizing. But in the labor market, no.
We're not allowed to do that. Oh, no, it's too.
Bring in a never-ending stream of people. We're constantly rigging the labor market. It's just, that's hypocritical. It's just bullshit.
It's like pro free market, but not pro globalism. I think that's it's a sensible economic policy, because it's what works. It's what works and what will help benefit the people the most. And then you could live in a nice, low tax, high wage society where property is affordable. You can invest more in your own businesses. We'll be being more and more productive as a country, as workers and as business owners. That within 10 years, if we stop migration, we'd easily be living in the best Anglo-Saxon country. And then other Anglo-Saxons that don't have the same migration policy, still letting in all these low-skill workers, suppressing wages, will want to come here because it's better here. So it's actually just it's a flow-on effect. Like, you just stop the migration, and you're basically going to start living in a utopia. Well, not quite a utopia, because that's obviously this unattainable. That's the whole meaning of the word. But you'll be living in the best society in the Anglosphere, at least, if not the entire world, if you just stopped bringing in low skill brown people all the time. It's actually it's extremely frustrating.
It's the single best policy we could do to improve the quality of life in the country.
Oh, absolutely. It
Yeah,
would work
yeah.
extremely quickly. It would be like
No one is talking about it. Not one politician, other than maybe Shane Jones, is talking about this issue. It is just complete radio silence, and that's what's so astonishing and alarming about this whole thing. Is we literally have hordes of third world foreigners coming in and radically changing to the point where they're building giant monkeys everywhere. And
the
I
giant
mean,
monkey statue in
yeah,
Auckland.
giant monkey statue that kind of looks like he's got like a mace, and
Yeah, that's an
it kind of
effective
looks like
use of our
something
country's
from
resources, isn't it? Building giant monkey statues. It's like, oh yeah,
yeah,
we live in a per capita recession where productivity is going through the floor. Oh, let's just build more monkey statues. Amazing.
yeah, yeah. It's pretty incredible. So, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, New Zealanders really need to understand that these people are not. They're not for us, and we need to apply a lot more pressure. I mean, you've got Luxon going around, shaking the hands of doing yoga with Indians, shaking the hands of random Indian people, and I mean the
No,
sense
oh
or
yeah, I don't have the tweet up, but there was a tweet from Luxon recently where he's like, "I just talked to Moody. There's been 100,000 Indians in the last 2 years that call New Zealand their new home. What
yeah,
we're talking about how to provide for them. It's like, how about you actually provide for the people that live here and have lived here for generations for once, instead of whoever like riffraff decide to hop on here on a plane. Like,
mm,
how about that for a policy?
yeah,
Oh, wait, here we go. I've
absolutely.
got the link. I assume this is it. Yeah, here.
I think it might be that one, but yeah, it's like, yeah, so I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
they
what's up?
call New Zealand their second home. How about they go back to their actual home, and then they're the
Yeah,
people can help
we don't
provide
want
for
to be
them.
treated like their
Yeah, we
second
don't want to be
home.
we don't
Our
want to be a
home is our
batch.
home. This
Yeah,
is our home. We're not interested in providing a second home to
yeah,
anyone
like
really.
the riffraff of the world. Like, we
Yeah,
don't
the
get.
riffraff.
It shouldn't be our. It's not our duty and not our responsibility.
If
And yet,
people thought about the nation the same way they think about their own home, their own household, then a lot of these problems would go away.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
That's also. It's like, it's sort of. I always think it's funny. Like,
do you
people.
have an obligation to bring other people into your house to live in your house with you and your family?
yeah.
Well, then no, no, you don't.
Mm,
What if the government passed a rule that said you had to let them in? Well, obviously that would be a bit of a problem, wouldn't it? I mean, that your nation is just like a home for your
Absolutely. That's the whole point.
extended family, your
That's what a
ethnic group.
nation is. That's like literally what the
You
nation
should treat
is.
it in the same way. Like all the same rules that apply to your family home apply to your nation in terms of bringing people in and letting them stay with you. When you go flatting, when you flat with other people, you want to choose people you have things in common with and that you're going to get along with, and not people who are going to try and flip it over to bloody Shortland Street or something while the test match is on. I don't know.
Or like, converted into a slum with 10 people in a room living in bunk beds. Like, you don't want your home to become that, and you don't want your country to become that.
Yeah, human compatibility, people having things in common and getting along, is a real and important factor that needs to be considered. But we're not allowed to consider it because that would be racist and discrimination. Well, I'm sorry, but these rules about what's racist and what's discriminatory are getting in the way of reality. They're getting in the way of real and important considerations, decisions that we need to make. I mean, I don't think it's good to treat people unfairly on the basis of their race, but putting that type of thinking like into immigration policy is really applying like a moral rule or a principle in a place that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make, like, the whole point of your immigration policy is to discriminate. It's to choose which type of people you want to bring in and which type of people you don't want to bring in. So the idea of discrimination sort of doesn't apply in that area.
Yeah.
It's a sort of a logical absurdity.
Yeah, just to add to that, it's sort of interesting because you talk about the moral argument there. It's because that's all they have. There is no economic argument for like mass migration anymore. We've won that debate. So we've won that debate years ago. People don't even try to say mass migration is good for the. I mean, some people do, but 90% of the population just go, well, 90% of the people that advocate for mass migration now go, oh, it's our duty because these people are hard done by, or they live in countries where they poop on the road. Oh, we need to let them live here because we have it so much better. We need to help them out. It's like, well, how about no? Like,
Your duty first and foremost is to
yeah, of course.
take care of your own country that was developed, protected, and fought for by your parents, your grandparents, your ancestors. That is your first duty. If you've got resources and will left over after that to help others, then maybe that's something you can do. But you've got to, your moral obligation, first of all, is, to your own family, to your own community, to your own nation. And only after that do you have a moral obligation to help other people, outsiders, strangers. So people have got that around the wrong way.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I think that was a good discussion. Should we wrap it up and go into our other stories?
Yep. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Yeah.
Cool. Any final statements, William?
Well, I mean, I guess on the positive note, the immigration is starting to track down. Oh no, my children.
That's all right. We can keep it going.
No, we can have a fourth co-host.
Do they want to say something on stream, or
do you want to say something, James? I'm talking to people on the computer.
Hello.
Say hello.
Hello. Hey, James. What do you think about remigration, James? All right. That's all.
I'm reminded of that. You remember that, like the British guy who was on the BBC, and like he had the Asian wife, and the kids come into the room in the stroller. Have you seen that video? It's quite funny.
Oh. Yeah. On the little rebounder trampoline thingy.
Yeah.
Well,
he's got the maracas or something.
Well, we can confirm your children are of founding stock, so that's good.
Jeez,
unlike the BBC presenter.
Yeah, I didn't realize his wife was Asiatic, but was a Hun. But
yeah. What I was saying there before we were going to move on, just in the past few months, the immigration coming in has started to track down. It's still high. It's still like 100. What it should be. What was the last figures? 170,000, something like that. But it was coming down. It's below 200,000 coming down now. So if that, and although a lot of New Zealand citizens are leaving, a lot of migrants are leaving too.
Yeah, still it's not that great here.
Still more coming in than leaving. But
they come here. Oh, it sucks. I'd rather go back to India, and then they leave. At least some of them are doing it.
Coming here, I thought that was very racist.
Sorry. So there are some things trending in the right direction, basically. But let's just cautiously hope that trend continues.
I've met like literal migrants, like people from the Philippines. Are like, oh no, I'm going back to the Philippines. I don't like it here. Stuff like that.
Yeah, what they tend to do is they come here to New Zealand, they get some sort of residency, and then with that opens up Australia to them, and then they go to Australia.
Yeah, that is a thing too.
Yeah, and then they can go to other places.
Although I do think it's still mostly white people fleeing New Zealand, because you just have to look at the numbers. There are tens of thousands of white Anglo-Saxon New Zealanders leaving this country every year at this point. There are some minorities that do the same thing, that are technically New Zealanders on their piece of paper, but I mean, like I've said. Oh, sorry, Gil. Oh, yeah, Gil. Do you have any final thoughts, and then I'll give mine.
Oh yeah, I think we've gone over a lot of these details. I think it's really quite alarming. So I just think that I always say this on the show. Remember to, I mean, this show is not where it begins and ends. It actually begins and ends with you, the listener. You've got to take this information and transmute it into something creative, into something that you can disperse it amongst more and more people in the minds of those around you. And try. This can be quite difficult because not everyone is on the same page. You've got to be kind of intelligent about it and strategic about it, but it's important that we get this in the minds of New Zealanders so that we can start acting as a group, as a collective, in our own interests, for us alone. And that does not mean being malicious to anyone, of course. Yeah. But this is the crux of what it comes down to. And also, on top of that, is helping people understand that really people in National and in ACT, people who think, it's the base right wing, when really they're just furthering this. In people's minds seem to present the veneer of capitalism when it's just some sort of
it's government subsidies. The mass migration is a massive government. It's like the biggest economic subsidy ever. Well, in our current society.
It's the main driver of it, and we are living in this sort of quasi kind of socialist, or it's got traits of it being such. It's not totally, as free as it should be, or as efficient as we could be. We could have a great economy. But I would just say, so, on top of that is, and in tandem with that is getting people to realize that these people are really not playing for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
They are not on our team.
I mean, just look at the picture of, I mean, you just had to see the tweet that we had earlier of
well, exactly.
Actually,
let's just comment on this quickly. I mean, this is really odd to me, is that across the world, be it in the United States and Australia or even New Zealand, you have this real rampant India shilling. And it's really strange. You've got J.D. Vance.
It's the echoes of the China shilling you had the last decade, where everyone was talking up China. Oh, there's all these great people in China, they're highly educated, blah, blah, blah. It's pretty much the mirror of that.
It's due to like a foreign policy realignment where they're trying to balance China. So they're trying to get on good terms with India, which is it's sort of a democratic country.
No, I mean, that's fine. I mean, I don't mind being on good terms with India, but they can stay in India. Like, the Indians can stay in India.
I agree. But I mean, that's why they're doing it. It's part of a foreign policy sort of balancing exercise against China, putting together, because the democratic countries of the world, the Western democratic countries, are sort of waning in power compared to everyone else. So having another big country
on the up. I mean, India is economically, because it's, it started at the bottom. It was like at the bottom until about 5 years ago when they actually started like making power lines and making power generators and stuff like that. So it is actually somewhat developing there finally. It took them long enough. So it's easier to see why the West wants it as like a new ally to counterbalance China.
And there is kind of history there. The British colonized it for a long time, and you go back into the deep annals of history. You had the Indo-Aryan sort of invasion of India and conquered and ruled there for a long time. Developed Indian culture. They had the Vedas, and so there's a lot of stuff that white people have had in common with India for a long time. There is more in common there. But stay in your own country.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I just wanted to say that, and it's all very well and good. So it doesn't begin and end here, guys. It begins with you, and really ends with you, or hopefully will begin with plenty of others that you reach out to. Because these people believe these things, Luxon and Seymour is so funny and great, but the people are under this very silly kind of illusion, and these people are the main perpetrators of this problem. So it's kind of up to us to.
Yeah, I just wanted to. Okay.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to share this as part of my closing statement. 10 years ago, people were calling Sweden the humanitarian superpower, and now they're deporting thousands of Somalians and Syrians and stuff. So things can change, and this changed as well. You didn't need like a super mega right-wing government come and take over the country. It was just because the political attitudes changed. The Swedes didn't want these people in their country, and the conservative moderate parties changed their positions on these because the people's wanted them to do so. Like, they didn't have to elect like the super Nazi party to or something
That's
to
right.
deport
That's a
all
really
these
good
people.
point.
Like, this can happen. You don't have to you don't have to elect like a super far right party to deport migrants. If enough people want it, the politicians will have to start listening, like they have in Sweden and like they have in Denmark and like they are doing in Austria. Although Austria, we are going to talk about that. That actually wasn't like a right wing party winning.
I think it was in Denmark. I'm not sure exactly the country, but probably Denmark, but maybe one of the other Scandinavian countries where like the anti-immigration policy was actually brought in by the Socialist Party on the left. So they adopted the so-called far-right immigration position.
Yeah.
And then the far-right party never got a look in, but it didn't matter really on the immigration issue because the left-wing people adopted the...
well, even here, in 2017, people seem to forget that like Jacinda campaigned on reducing net migration to like 20,000 a year. Like, obviously they didn't implement that, but they did campaign on it as part of their campaign policy. Yeah, I mean... Of course, they weren't actually going to do it, but it looks like in Sweden and Denmark, these parties are actually doing it. Are doing the things they campaign on. Maybe that's because I don't know, their politicians are actually somewhat trustworthy there, which is sort of amazing, really. But
We have to
there is a
remember
shift
that
going on there.
these countries, these Scandinavian countries, like people often look to them because in many ways they were the best countries in the world on the Human Development Index and quality of life and various measures. The Scandinavian countries are the best. So people look to these countries and what they're doing and try and emulate them or advocate for emulating them in lots of ways. So the fact that they are doing this, they are doing remigration in these countries. We can point to these countries and say, look, these are the best countries in the world. They've decided that remigration. We should be doing it too.
Yeah, it's like all these like communists keep going, oh, we need to implement higher taxes because the taxes are higher in Sweden. It's like, well, let's implement, remigration because that's what they're doing in Sweden. And then after that, we can put the tax rate up by 2 or something, even though I don't think we would need to. Like you remigrate all these people, we'll just be saving lots of money. You wouldn't even need high tax.
Declare a climate emergency as well. It's a climate emergency. Too many, they're letting off too many carbon fumes.
I think that's a can of worms you don't want to open. You don't want to start using
Actually, there's a reasonable
climate
argument.
change.
Because the people in developed Western countries have more emissions per person, you're actually helping the climate by forcing people to stay in their third world country because they emit less while they're there than if they come here.
There's an environmental argument. I do think more of a conservation, like we won't have to build houses and, rip up like farmland and forests to build roads and stuff and have less, pollution because we have less people, including like, plastics going into the rivers and stuff. But yeah, there's an environmental argument. There's all sorts of arguments that you can make. And we pretty much win all of them because our worldview is based in truth and we're winning. And, if things can change in Sweden, they can change here. They can change in Australia. They can change in Canada. They can change in France. They can change in Austria, which may very well be happening right before our eyes. Like, remigration is pretty much inevitable, the way I see it. It's either they remigrate or our countries don't exist. Those are like the only two logical endpoints. And I think remigration is actually much more likely. And it's happening right now in other countries.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to happen in other countries too. Trump, the biggest election in the world is the US elections, and Trump is actively campaigning on the largest mass deportation in history.
Yes, so there you go.
Now, I'm not saying he's going to do it. He might do it. He might not do it. I don't know. But it's the most important, at least one of the most important, arguably the most important issue in the election, and he's actively campaigning on it. So this is not this is a mainstream issue, is what I'm saying. Like, it couldn't get any more mainstream. It couldn't get any bigger than this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, people are genuinely concerned about it. And as such, it's taking the forefront all over the world of Western nations. So, absolutely. It's not like a far-right thing at all. They tried to suppress it so much, but it's like, so here we go.
Yeah, it's
right, there you go.
Tweet from Charlie Kirk. 66% of Americans across party lines are in favor of mass deportations of illegal immigrants. So
47% of Democrats favor it. It's huge.
That's the reason why when 10, 15 years ago you had like Obama going, oh, we need to let in all these people, blah blah blah. But even Kamala's like, oh no, I'm actually strong on the border, even though obviously she isn't. But at least she's doing the lip service, which before they didn't even do. They just went, oh, we have to help these people and all this sort of nonsense.
It's a ploy to attract the conservatives. But I mean, Charlie Kirk could just smile and scare all these people away. So maybe that's what we need to. Maybe that's the remigration weapon. Is Charlie Kirk's smile.
There we go.
What about the border? Just
giant flat screen TVs.
Welcome, guys.
All the Mexicans. Well, I've seen a lot of screwed up shit, bro, but I think I'm gonna go back to Mexico, hombre. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so.
All right, should we move on to our next topic? I saw this headline and I just laughed. It literally seems like a parody. New Zealand officials say Navy ship didn't sink because captain was a woman. Seriously, it's current year. It's like, really? So, for those that don't know, there was the captain of a naval ship, Yovanine Gray, who's like just look at her. She's like a 90-pound, like, dyke That's like
that's the
DEI hire
was
of this.
80 after she drank all that,
Yeah.
and then she went to pilot the ship after she drank that bowl of kava. Yeah, anyway, 30
But
minutes
anyways,
later.
yeah, it's like a 90-pound lesbian that was given the captaincy of this, important logistical ship, the only one we have in the New Zealand Navy, and crash it into a reef, like during calm weather. So obviously something's going on there. And it's just been nothing but, like, people are pointing out the obvious. Why is this 90-pound lesbian in charge of, like, the captain of an important Navy vessel?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a DEI hire. But
Looks
everyone's like,
she
seriously,
belongs to the
dude.
library.
Seriously,
I don't know.
dude, it's 2024. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, when I don't think like the long history of the Royal New Zealand Navy. When was the last time like a male captain like ran into a reef in like calm weather? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think that ever happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And when was the last time we had like a 90-pound lesbian as well?
Yeah, I think this is the
Last
only time, so it's 100% for the
year? Yeah.
90-pound lesbian captains. So, like, obvious DEI hire. Judith Collins was seething about it. Wow, women can be captains too. I mean, they
Yeah.
can if you don't, like, if you promote them over their male counterparts that are probably 10 times more competent. It's just crazy, and I just thought it's funny to see, like, article headlines like this.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, they're doing a court of inquiry, right? And, the boat has been crashed. The captain is generally responsible for the boat, ultimately, the fate of the boat. The captain
The
used to
leader's
go-
responsible. This is like a common concept. The leader of something is responsible for it.
Yeah, the captain used to go down with the ship. We don't do that anymore. Maybe it's okay that we don't do that anymore, but at least figuratively, at least in some sort of, in some sense, the captain ought to be responsible for the fate of the vessel. Now, I don't know whether it's her fault if she did something wrong to run the ship onto the reef, but she might have, and that's something the court of inquiry needs to investigate. And I don't know if she was picked for the job because she was the best person or because she was a woman and a lesbian, if she got a leg because she's a woman or a lesbian. But given the way a government behaves, it's a reasonable question to ask whether that is something that has happened here. And so the court of inquiry needs to ask those questions. And New Zealanders shouldn't accept any court of inquiry that doesn't give them a straight answer on that. Did she fuck up and crash the boat because she was incompetent? And was she hired because she was the best person for the job, or did she get the job because she's a woman and a lesbian? We want to know the answer to that.
I think, I mean, the thing is, it's already sort of telling because Judith Collins just goes, wow, that's vile and misogynistic. They actually they never said, like, this was the most capable person for the job. Like, I haven't heard any politician, like, Navy personnel or whatever say this. They just go, wow, it's like 2024, dude. It's like, they actually don't say the magic words. This was the most capable person because I can guarantee she wasn't.
Yeah, true. They don't say that, do they? They don't, riff off of, oh, she achieved this, she got that medal, or whatever, like this medal of bravery or whatever. Or this qualification. They actually, they say it's 2024, bigot. Get with lesbians crashing things into coral reefs on calm days because it's the current year, and you're just a bigot. Yeah.
Yeah, and also they're basically like putting up these strawman arguments. Like Judith Collins is like, "Wow, because she's a woman, that's obviously not why the thing crashed." Well, it's like, actually, did she get into her position of power because she was a woman, and they needed that for the quota? So obvious, like they're not even they're not addressing the argument because I think they already know the answer. They're not answering the questions because they don't want to give us the answer. And I think
Collins made the National Party crash not too long ago, so I think she would know something about that,
Yeah.
a couple of years ago.
Yeah, she got 25% on the vote when she was leader of the National Party. So yeah, she's a bit of an expert on things crashing.
Go down a bit. Go down a little. She always looks really surprised at everything. Her eyebrows are always like really, like she's always seeing something surprising. Anyway, I just thought I'd comment on that. But yeah. So yeah.
All right. Well, I don't know. $100 million down the road. This is your DEI tax. Like this is your competency crisis DEI tax. You have to pay $100 million to buy a new boat because the DEI hire crashed it. Thanks, white man. Thanks for your money. We need more of it. We crashed the boat by accident.
Oh,
We need another $100 million to buy a new one.
It was actually on fire. Most of the ship's fuel appeared to have burned out in the fire, according to Marine Pollution Advisory Committee. But that could have been like, I mean,
Yeah,
nothing,
pretty big like ecological disaster having the
that could have
big
been
oil
real.
spill off Samoa.
Yeah, that could have been tragic. So I mean, especially with how coral reefs are already really messed up. You know, they're like all endangered, or whatever. So yeah, it's
Should we listen firsthand
that's
what Collins had to say? I've got this tab here.
mm,
Let's see what she had to say.
What
Maybe we should have started
is
this.
not tracking well is the deeply concerning, misogynistic narrative that reared its head before our people had even made it home to New Zealand. The Court of Inquiry has been stood up to establish what caused this terrible incident. The one thing that we already know did not cause it is the gender of the ship's captain, a woman with 30 years naval experience who on the night made the call to get her people to safety. I'm appalled to see the comments online from these armed.
It's interesting that they're more concerned with like language than crashing a multi-million-dollar ship and the potential like ecological and economic disaster for a neighboring nation.
That's right. Behavior of tyrants, right?
Yeah, saying mean things online is much more important.
She's a big fat hypocrite, actually. And I'm sick and tired of listening to her telling everyone else what to do. And here we have evidence that she had travelled from Freeman's Bay to go and visit with her friend on the beach in
Is she just like projecting there? She's a big fat hypocrite. Like, I think there's something going on there with Judith Collins.
I think so.
No, it's just interesting that I thought obviously, it's a huge blow to the country's prestige to have a ship just ran into a reef. Like it's a bad thing to happen, and then it's interesting just to see the mainstream response to that as well. And it'll be interesting to see what the inquiry brings up, but it'll be also interesting whether the inquiry even asks the questions that everyone else is asking. Although not the media, they're not asking it either, but like actual like normal people.
That pretty much is the amount that costs. That the 100 million is like how much Judith put into our military budget.
Remember true. That's like the increase at the military budget over the next 5 years is about $100 million. So, well, there you go. There's $100 million gone. Easy come, easy go.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, especially when you've got Defense Minister Judith Collins and
why? That's just nuts. I can't believe Judith Collins is the Defense Minister. That's like, talk about DEI hires. I think absolutely.
What's the short, punchy lady got to do with defense of our country?
Yeah.
Oh gosh,
it's ridiculous. Yeah, obviously she's a DEI hire as the Defense Minister.
Yeah. Oh, I think they all are basically.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I mean, anything else to add to that, William?
No, I think I've seen that.
Sort of covered
it. I'm going to have to go and look after the kids shortly, so I'm not sure how much longer you want to keep going for.
Oh, we'll go. Do you have another 10 minutes? We'll just quickly go over the Austrian election, then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Yeah, okay. So this sort of relates to what we were talking about in migration, right? And shifting attitudes towards migrants, mass migration, globalism, remigration, that sort of thing. So for the first time in Austrian history, a further right than conservative party has won the election. They got the most seats, they got the most votes. Because of their system, obviously they didn't get the most seats because they still got just under 30. But it's still a massive achievement. 30, being first out of the parties, overtaking the Conservatives, overtaking the Socialists and the Greens to become the major political force that it is now. So the Freedom Party of Austria has, it won the election, and it looks like it's potentially going to go into a coalition government with the Conservatives, who over the years have had to, shift their rhetoric right because of the Freedom Party. The Freedom Party was sort of dragging the Conservatives right, which, we need to do. So it's interesting to see this shift happen, and hopefully it'll be interesting to see what sort of government is formed, whether the Conservatives will cuck out and form one with the Socialists, or whether they'll do what the actual people want and have a coalition government with, the populist, like right-wing populist party that calls for the neutral policy was called Fortress Austria. They don't want any like interlopers and foreigners coming into their country. So it's sort of interesting that they've won on that campaign. And again, they have a policy of remigration of sending these, people from Syria, from Afghanistan, Somalia, back to their countries, very similar to what they're doing in Sweden and Denmark right now. So it's interesting to see these ideas spreading and how they're getting implemented over the European continent. And I think it's inevitable that stuff like this starts happening in the Anglosphere and potentially even New Zealand. So any thoughts on the Austrian election? Not Australian, it's like Austrian, sorry.
Well, yeah, I'd basically just sort of agree with what you said. They openly campaigned on remigration and got the highest share of the vote. So like it worked for them. It's not something you need to be reluctant about, or you need to be, you need to say in a careful way. The ordinary voter is rewarding people. And it's not just happening in Austria. The Trump campaign in the US is doing the same thing. They're doing it in Sweden. It's happening everywhere. If you just say, look, the policy of mass migration was wrong, and now we need to send some of these people back, and you openly campaign on that, the public rewards you.
Yeah, and we have to.
That's the pattern we're seeing. So let's start doing that.
Let's start like pushing New Zealand first in that direction, because I was very disappointed that migration was not an issue pretty much at all last campaign cycle. So we need to change that for this next coming campaign, and we need, with our influence on like either as within the party and without the party, like inside and out of the New Zealand First Party, to push them further right on migration, which will then, as sort of a chain effect, push the National Party and potentially the ACT Party further right on their migration policy. So we need to start this like chain effect now in New Zealand, because it didn't happen last election cycle, but it sort of has to happen the next one. So we have to start doing that now. Start like upping our rhetoric. Start influencing. Help campaign for people that have the right rhetoric. Support these people. Get our message out there, and basically get our country on the right track, the same track as Europe. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Anything to add to that? Because I know you have to go soon.
No, you basically said it. I agree. That's what we need to be doing.
Absolutely. Gilbert, anything to add to that?
Oh, yeah, it's heartening to see the Austrians, do this. And I think, hopefully our own politicians look to Europe as an example and do the same thing. But, politicians are famously lazy and they are people pleasers. So
that's the thing. If the people want it, it can happen, like has happened in Sweden. The people wanted mass deportation. They wanted remigration and deportations, and now they're doing it. Like you have to take the political, like the innate nature of a politician and use it to your advantage, and try shift them to your direction.
Yeah, well, it needs to. Yeah, we really need to impress that upon people that this it's do or die. As you say, it has to happen next election cycle. So we really need to get this into the New Zealand consciousness somehow through whatever means necessary to say, immigration is the issue. This is the issue, and not just immigration, but remigration. So, which I guess is immigration. Okay.
Yeah.
So this has to be. We have to. How long have we got till the next election? 3 years. I think.
3 years in between elections, so about another, year-ish.
Yeah. Right.
So, 2 years. 2 years. Sorry, 2 years.
2 years. That's right. Yeah, 2 years. So I mean, what this time we have, we've all got to.
Yeah.
Do something to hopefully something can come our way, but yeah, that just has to be the thing. That's like the magnum opus or whatever for all the problems right now. So.
Yeah. And as we can see from the polls, the national government is like the National Act NZ First government is completely blowing out, a potential left-wing government. And we should use that to our advantage instead of this election cycle talking about defeating the left, because they defeated themselves. Like our rhetoric has to be getting New Zealand first and a potential remigration, anti-mass migration policy into the next coalition deal. Like that's what we're going to need to do. Like that should be our goal for the next election, because the Labour and Green Party aren't going to form a government next election because no one likes them, and I do not see that changing in the next 2 years. Like I think that's nearly impossible. So
they really screwed themselves with the woke sort of
absolutely.
lesbian theory is what we'll call it. Yeah. So
all right. I know you have to go, so we'll that's why I did that so sort of quick. But thanks for coming on, William. It's been a great chat. Always glad to have you on and talk about New Zealand issues. It's pretty good because a lot of the time we talk about international issues with our international guests. So great to have you back and talk about some local issues. And you can, if you're interested in seeing what William McGimpsey has to say, check him out on X, check out his blog, and give him a like, give him a follow.
Thanks very much, guys. It was really good. And I thank you for inviting me on. Good chat.
Yeah, always happy to. And to the viewers, thanks for watching. To the people watching the replay, thank you for watching the replay. Hope you have a great weekend. And as always, stay blessed, not stressed.
See you.
See you, everybody.